Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the second TWF Lunch and Learn. I'm Bethany Barefoot, and I'm coming to you from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania today. And I just wanted to kind of share a little bit about why I wanted to start doing these lunch and learns. I've been working from home since March, and like many of you, I'm sure you've missed interacting with your family and friends who you haven't seen in a while. So that was kind of the inspiration behind hosting these monthly lunch and learns, just to see some of my friends' beautiful faces and to really uplift other people's stories and give people a space where they can share some different things that they're passionate about and also highlight some small businesses, as we'll get to a little bit later. If you weren't able to join last month's Lunch and Learn, you're probably wondering what TWF stands for. And I promise I will get to that a little bit later. But first, just wanted to share with you what you can expect over the next hour or so. So like I said, I will be doing a quick introduction, just sharing what TWF stands for and a little bit more about the reasoning behind these lunch and learns. Next, I'll share today's lunch recipe. It wouldn't be a lunch and learn if we didn't include some type of lunch. And then for the next half an hour or so after that, we'll get into the main presentation of today's event, which will be presented by my lovely sister, Julie. And then I'm really excited. My new friend Maeve is here, and she will be talking about her small business that I think you're all going to love. And then the last 5 minutes or so, I'll just do a quick wrap up, share about next month's Lunch and Learn, and provide you some resources on where you can learn more about the TWF Lunch and Learns. Okay, so what does TWF stand for? It stands for Tomorrow We Fight. Where did that come from? Well, for those of you that know me best, you probably know that RBG, amazing woman, loved her dearly, and as you all know, we lost her a few months ago. And there's one RBG quote that I always really loved, and it was, "Fight for the things you care about in life, but do it in a way that leads others to join you." And I actually got this mug with this quote for my birthday, and I love it. I use it almost every single day. And, you know, after RBG passed away, I was on social media and I saw Brené Brown post something that said, "Today we mourn, and then tomorrow we fight for the legacy that she left us." And that really translated for me into tomorrow we fight. I'm sure if we all took a moment to kind of stop and reflect, we could think about a moment in our lives where something happened, we mourned that moment, we reflected in that moment, and then we decided that whenever the sun rose again tomorrow, we were going to fight for the things that we truly cared about in life. And that's kind of the inspiration behind the logo that you can see down on the bottom right-hand side. If you flip it around, that blue part kind of looks like one of the collars that RBG was famous for wearing. And if you look at it just straight on, it kind of looks like the sun. The sun is rising again tomorrow, like it does every single day. So we may be fighting for many different things in our lives. We may be fighting for love, kindness, equality, anything that you can think of. And I know there's a lot of things that I'm personally passionate about that I love sharing with others. And I know that there's probably a lot of things that you guys are passionate about that I would love to learn more about. And that's really what inspired me to do these Lunch and Learns, because I'm always so interested in hearing what other people are working on and learning the types of different, projects that they're passionate about. And that's why I really wanted this space to be created for my friends to come and share these great projects that they're working on. So with that being said, every month I'm planning on hosting these until as long as I'm working from home and as long as everybody is still enjoying them. So everyone is welcome. Aubrey, so happy that you brought your dog with you. Everyone is welcomed. Every month, you can expect to get a lunch recipe. So whenever you register for the event, I'll actually include a different lunch recipe that you are welcome to make the day of, the next day, whenever you feel like making it. You can expect to have the main topic, which, as I mentioned today, is we are fighting for lessons learned in 2020. That will either be presented by a friend, or we can invite a community member in to interview them about something that they're contributing to. And then there will always be a small business spotlight. So really highlighting small businesses. I think we learned during this pandemic that we really need to uplift those small businesses in our community. So these will take place the first Friday of every month via Zoom. So be sure to mark your calendar for those dates moving forward. So of course it wouldn't be a lunch and learn, like I said, if we weren't going to talk about lunch at least a little bit. So if you registered in advance, you should have seen the link that provided this recipe. So each month a recipe is going to be provided by my friend Emily Kyler, who is actually a nutritionist in the Pittsburgh area. You can find her website on the top right-hand corner. And today's recipe was zucchini, mushroom, and egg breakfast. So a little bit of breakfast for lunch, which is never a bad idea. It takes about 20 minutes. You can see the ingredients are on the left-hand side. Not too many things you need to add to your grocery list, and it looks delicious. So hopefully everybody either got a chance to make it today or maybe over the weekend. And I also encourage you to check out her website. She has a lot of great content and a lot of great advice. So now for the main portion of our afternoon, we will be fighting for lessons learned in 2020. So every single month, the topic will start with we fight for, and then whatever the topic the friend or the community member would like to discuss. And today I'm so excited to have my sister with us. My sister has been one of my biggest support systems since this pandemic started. I think before the pandemic, we would talk at least once a week. And whenever the pandemic started, I think we started talking almost every single day. We started doing Monday morning check-ins and really just talking about how we have been feeling throughout this whole, past 9 months. And I really wanted to invite Julie here today to talk about some of the things that her and I have been talking about during this time, because I've found it really beneficial and really helpful in my life, and I'm sure it could be helpful for all of you as well. And I know we're heading into a new year, so hopefully, I know not much might not change as we head into 2021, but at least maybe we can change our mindset as we head into 2021. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce my sister, Julie. Take it away.
Thanks, Bethany. I wasn't expecting to almost cry when you said that. So can you actually back up and go back to that last slide for a little bit, please? Thanks. So it's really exciting to share in this conversation with you. There's some folks I see in the participants that I've met briefly, that maybe I've never met, and some dear friends, and of course, Bethany. And so when Bethany asked me after her first TWF lunch and learn to talk about lessons learned in 2020, I thought, what am I going to talk about? I mean, I could talk to you about washing your hands and don't touch your face and how to scrub your groceries, because I did that once or twice this year. But then this idea sort of started to bubble to the top about, just like Bethany said, sharing some of the conversations that she and I have had, conversations that I've had with some of the folks on the call today, with my family and other friends. And that really got me excited. So, this year has definitely been a masterclass in making decisions with imperfect information and limited information. And for me, the best way to work through that and make those decisions is to talk and talk some more. You can ask my husband, but that helps me. Listening also is helpful. Listening to friends, family, some limited reliable news sources, books, podcasts, and sometimes, maybe a lot of times, Peloton instructors. So I thought today it would be fun to share some of that with you. So let me start by saying I don't promise to have all the answers. I don't promise to have it all figured out. You know, as we're sitting here, I have 3 baskets of clean but unfolded laundry sitting in my bedroom. And my Christmas shopping isn't done. And I have a lot of emails that are flagged for follow-up in my inbox. So I hope I'm not the only one in sharing those things. But I'm just really excited to share, like I said, some of the lessons 2020 has taught me, and also to hear from you. So I thought we would start by getting to know each other a little bit and making this interactive. So if you wouldn't mind, type in the chat to everyone answers to these questions. And I think everyone is good on this name one, but I put this on here, and some of you who have kids at home who are doing virtual learning might appreciate this, but my son's 3rd grade teacher is still regretting the day that she showed the students how they could change their names on the Zoom box, because she got things like Fortnite, leader, all kinds of crazy names. So share your name, where your favorite place in the world is, your goal for the end of the decade, and that's not a mistyping. It's not 2021. What's your goal for the end of the decade? So 2030. And then finish this sentence, I wish everyone could. So take a minute and pop those in the chat, please. Thank you, Jess. I can't wait for the play space to open myself. Ooh, a quiet beach with waves. I love it, Amy. Bermuda, that was a good trip, Bethany. Mediterranean, I've never been there, Julie. That's on my bucket list. Hi, Leslie, long time no talk. New Zealand, that's a good one too. Oh, traveling to anywhere. Dr. Gracie, I love that. Don't we all wish, right? Making people more open-minded. Awesome. So much fun. Well, thank you for sharing that. You know, I think it's, you know, we've got a diverse group from, you know, different age groups, different places in the world, different, you know, places in our lives. I think it's always fun to find the commonalities in a group. So I think we're all looking forward to getting back to traveling. And keep in mind those last 2. So your goal for the end of the decade, and then finish this sentence. I thought somebody might say, I wish everyone could wear a mask, but I mean, that's the first thing that came to mind when I first read it. But we won't go there today because we're all safely on Zoom today. So, okay, cool. So let's jump into it. Bethany, if you could go to the next slide, please. Okay, so I thought before we really dive into the lessons learned for this year, I thought it would be helpful to maybe address the elephant that might be in the Zoom room. So you might be asking yourself, how can we be talking about lessons learned when there's so much suffering going on in the world right now? And so I wanted to just take a minute and talk to you a little bit about comparative suffering. So those of you who know me know that I'm a huge Brene Brown fan. I think Bethany actually introduced me to Brene, so thank you for that. And her podcast, Unlocking Us, is just food for the soul. I highly recommend it if you've not checked it out now. And it was on one of her first episodes this spring, like in the thick of quarantine, that I was introduced to this topic. And it was so helpful for me, and still is really helpful for me. We all know how dangerous comparison can be. Just a quick scroll down your Facebook feed can leave you feeling like you don't have enough, or you're not successful enough, or you're not doing enough. And when comparison is triggered by fear and scarcity, even our pain and our hurt are not immune to being ranked. And so when that happens, we deny ourselves the permission to feel because we don't think that our situation is bad enough. For example, I shouldn't complain that my kids are home doing virtual learning and missing out on school because there are kids in the world who don't have a home, who are homeless. Or I shouldn't complain about a tough day that I've had at work because there's so many people who've lost their jobs in the pandemic. Does that sort of make sense? Have you caught yourself having those conversations? I know I have. But here's the thing, those emotions, they don't go away. And instead they just double down. And we have to remember that empathy and compassion are not finite. There's enough of it to go around. And actually, when we practice kindness and love and gratitude, like we were all talking about in the chat just a minute ago, when we practice those things in our own lives, we don't have less to give, we actually have more to give. So I just want to give each other permission this afternoon to feel today and to really work on ourselves so that we have more to give others. So if you go to the next slide, Bethany, I wanted to share, you know, we all remember that last normal thing we did, right? Like think back to March, February, maybe for some of us, and pop a note in the chat. What was the last normal thing you did before quarantine? I'll tell you, for my family, it was a long weekend to DC to celebrate my son Sam's 8th birthday. We stayed in a hotel. We visited the National Museums the day before they all closed down. We ate inside at several restaurants. One even had a salad bar. I'll just say that. But this was the last normal thing we did. It looks like, oh, someone went to Disney World, Amy, a bridal shower, a birthday dinner, Idaho. I can tell why we all have the travel bug, because it looks like we were all doing a lot of traveling before quarantine. So, you know, don't get me wrong, it'll be nice to get back to these things. But it'll also be good, I think, to take with us some of the lessons that we've learned in 2020. So let's just jump in and talk about some of those things. Thanks for sharing, everyone. So when I think about what 2020 has taught me, or in some cases just given me a simple reminder, they fit into these 3 buckets for me. Making space, betting on yourself, and lifting up other women. And so I just want to dive into each of these a little bit. And please, you know, keep the chat going if you have something to share, because I'd love to hear from you and what you all are thinking. So, all right, so making space. 2020 has certainly reminded me to make space in my life for what's important. And then once I've made that space, to protect that space. So in the early months of quarantine, I made an intentional decision to start journaling. And I have this book that I actually bought, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago and never started. But in March, actually in April, I made the intentional decision to start journaling. It was something I've always wanted to do. And I had started and stopped, like I said, but this time I knew there were moments that were happening and there were feelings that I was having and just little nuggets of inspiration that I needed to write down and I wanted to remember. And I'm so thankful that I did. So if I open this book up, I could show you that on April 29th, one of the first things I wrote down was the word grace. And it's grace for myself and it's grace for others. You know, the entire world is going through the same pandemic, but our individual experiences are all a little bit different. And so it reminds me of this quote that I'm going to share with you. It says, "Be kind always, for everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about." And I think now more than ever, I'm working to approach everyday situations with that in mind. Your kids, my kids may barge in here at any moment. The dog may start barking. Aubrey, I still haven't seen your dog, but if you want to prop him or her up, I would love to have a look. Like, but we need to make space for these things and have grace for them, right? You're ordering takeout for the second, third, okay, fourth or fifth time this week. Like, just give yourself some grace, right? Hopefully you're supporting a small business while you're doing that. Your coworker needs 15 minutes at the beginning of every call to just talk about life, and you just want to get down to business. Make some space for them, listen for them. So that's the first thing. And that really goes into the second thing that I wanted to share. A few weeks ago, surprise, surprise, I was listening to Brene Brown, and I heard her say this. She said, at the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of my life, I want to be able to say that I contributed more than I criticized. And you can bet I wrote that in my journal. So how do we do this? Well, the obvious thing is, it's obvious, but it's sometimes the hardest thing is to just get involved. So if you don't like the choices, the decisions that are being made by your school, by your community, by the employee resource group at work, get involved, raise your hand, volunteer, find opportunities. If you don't agree with everything someone's saying, and when do we ever agree with everything someone's saying, find opportunities to praise them, find opportunities to find common ground and recognize it. And the last thing I would say as it relates to contributing more than criticizing is, make space for listening. Harriet Lerner is another person I'd highly recommend learning more about. She's a well-known psychologist whose work focuses on women and relationships. And she says, if we would only listen with the same passion that we feel about needing to be heard. And the first time I heard that, I was like, ooh, that's good. Like, I need to read that again. So if only we would listen with the same passion that we feel about needing to be heard. I'm working on this. It's really easy to listen when you agree with what somebody's saying, but when you don't agree with what they're saying, it's really easy to get defensive and to listen for the inaccuracies and to listen for the exaggerations. And so I'm trying to do this, in light of, like I said earlier, a lot of tough decisions we're all having to make. We just came out of a really heated political environment. I'm trying to take a breath and recognize my own defensiveness, listen to understand, ask questions when I don't, and looking for common ground in a way that we can work forward where we're contributing more than we're criticizing. And the last thing I'll share is just making space for you. And I know I'm not the first person to tell you this, and that is to make space for yourself, right? So for those of you who know me, for me, it's early in the morning. It's when nobody's yelling for mom or wife or boss. It's just for me. And it's doing things that are serving me. It's not scrolling through my phone, although sometimes I get sucked into that. But it's doing things that work for me. So it might be reading. One thing I started doing late last year, and I'm trying to improve upon, is knitting. I do my best thinking when I'm knitting. It's kind of like being in the shower. So making time for yourself. So I would love to hear how you're doing that for yourself. So pop in the chat and tell me what you're doing for you and how it's serving you. I like that, Leslie. It's so important to make time for this. We all get so busy. I like to say life is full, it's not busy. But it's so important to make time for stuff like this, long walks, hikes. So Peloton, I have lots of my Peloton friends on here. Thanks for your support, ladies. I love Aubrey. I'm gonna keep talking about your dog because I'm with you. My dog has had more walks around the neighborhood in the past 8 months than in her entire life. Christmas crafts, awesome. Okay, great. So I love that you're making time for yourselves. And the only thing I would say is, I started this slide with protecting space. I don't know about you, but we got a glimpse of normal, I feel like, over the summer and into the early fall. And I found myself jumping back into old busyness activities. And so just remember to protect that space. Okay, Bethany, we're ready for the next one. Okay, so bet on yourself. So 2020 has taught me this. This was not a reminder. This is something that I learned this year. So I'll share a little story with you. I quit my job on March 9th, and I had been with that company for 7 years. I had learned a lot. I had formed a lot of great relationships, some that I still have with my former coworkers. And I like to think that I made some positive contributions, but it had stopped serving me, and I found myself criticizing more than contributing. Sound familiar? And so after lots of contemplation and even some therapy, if I'm being honest with you ladies, I decided to resign. And on March 23rd, after a week of quarantine, I started building MPB Financial, which is a boutique firm specializing in offering insurance and wealth management. So if you want to talk about insurance later, we can do that. So I'm working from home and building this company. And by the end of May, we had gotten licensed with the state. We were approved by the state to do business, and we had set up some really respectable relationships with some elite insurance companies. And sounds pretty good, right? Lot of accomplishment in a few months working from home, you know, homeschooling my kids and all that fun stuff. So here's what I was telling myself and other people. So contrast this with what I just shared. I was saying things like, we're up and running, but I just don't know if we'll be able to keep up with the new business when it starts coming in. My biggest nightmare, my biggest fear is that we won't be ready when this really starts taking off. I'm afraid that I missed something. And over again, I was telling myself this over and over again. And other people, my boss, my husband, my friends, until one day, I just stopped. It hit me that I needed to change my narrative. It might have been on a Peloton ride. It might have been walking around the neighborhood. It might have been sitting, you know, in my chair in the early morning, just, you know, knitting or thinking. But so I started telling myself and others that we're ready. We built something really great, and I can't wait for you to experience it. And just changing that narrative made all the difference for me. If you don't tell yourself that you believe in yourself, if you don't believe in yourself, say it out loud, no one else will. So if you're telling yourself things like that, stop, please. The next thing is all about authenticity over perfection. So, and with this, you know, I'll just make a confession. I am a recovering perfectionist. Blame it on being the oldest of 3 children. Blame it on being a girl who grew up in the 80s and the 90s. And if you want a good read on how we condition our girls to be polite and quiet and perfect, read Glennon Doyle's book, Untamed. I think I've bought that book and given it away to more people than I can count. And I actually went to look for it this morning, and I don't have a copy still, so I need to buy another one. But so it's me. I'm a recovering perfectionist. I'll probably be in recovery for the rest of my life. But so Glennon Doyle, who's the author of Untamed, she says, we can choose to be perfect and admired, or to be real and loved. And I've just decided I'm choosing the latter. Thank you, Bethany. You do have one of my copies. So I'm working really hard on just showing up as me at work and at home and in my relationships, and especially with my kids. One of my kids came home before they were sent home for virtual learning. They came home from school with this picture that said, mistakes are proof you are trying. And right now I'm in the process of having them finish coloring it and then making copies of it and putting it up all over my house. Some for them, but mostly for myself, because it's just not healthy. So authenticity over perfection, ladies. And then the last one, you know, this one's simple, but you could probably spend a lifetime studying Carol Dweck, D-W-E-C-K. She's another research psychologist who talks about growth the growth mindset, and it's just really fascinating. But for me, a growth mindset just means adding this one little word to the end of your sentences. So it's just, I don't know how to do XYZ yet. I haven't run a marathon yet. And just adding those 3 little letters to the end of your sentence is a complete change in your mindset. So put something in the chat that you haven't learned how to do yet. Oh, relax. Nice one, Petra. Use my Peloton. Bethany took her first Peloton ride yesterday. I was so proud of her. Skydive. I like that one. Start my own business. Run a marathon. Awesome. So as you're thinking about those, what do I want to accomplish? QuickBooks. Ugh. Understanding your new line of work. Oh, that's been so, like, in these past 8 months, you know, I've worked in insurance all of my professional life, but I never actually started an agency until this year. And so understanding all the ins and outs of it has just been challenging. So it's just, I don't understand it yet. Awesome. Okay. I think I'm probably running short on time, Bethany, so I should probably like pick it up. Okay, so just one more bucket I want to share with you. I love, you know, I know Petrus is on the phone or on the call today, but it's mostly a group of women here. And I shared with you earlier how I left my job earlier this year. And when I left, you know, a lot of people sent me messages like best wishes, good luck, which was really nice. But there was one woman who sent me a message on LinkedIn and it really stuck with me. And she said, keep lifting up women. And one of the last things I did at that company was we sort of started a program that was for women in leadership. And now that I'm at a new company, we're starting a similar group. We're calling them squads, but they're like mentoring circles for women. And that's not an original idea. I belong to a group called Elevate, which I would recommend. It's an international women's organization. And they bring together women to talk about, Bethany's moving me along, to grow and learn from each other. And so those are just 2 examples of being intentional, right? We have to be intentional about it. And we need more people like those of us on the phone to be an example. And it's not just for us. It's not just for our daughters or the generation that's coming behind us. It's for the world. And you might say like, wow, Julie, that's like pie in the sky. But I'll share this with you. And there are countless other studies that support this. CNBC did a study last year. And for every female CEO, there are 19 male CEOs in the United States. And in that same study, they found that in the 2 years after a CEO is replaced in a company, if that CEO is replaced with a woman, the results outperform the businesses that were replaced with a male by 20%, their stock price. So we need more of us ladies in leadership positions. And the only way we're going to get there is be intentional about it. And the last thing, and maybe you can just share this in the chat and we'll keep moving in the interest of time, but unfortunately, COVID has had a negative impact on women, a biased impact on women. And I was looking up some numbers, and the labor force participation rate, which is the number of people who are technically employed or looking for employment, overall is dropping. But for women who have children under the age of 13, the percent that it's dropping is double to our male counterparts. So more of us are stepping out of the workforce, stepping out of our professional lives to take care of kids and to take care of sick family members. And so one thing that I'm trying to focus on for next year is, how do I help those women? How do I either be in a place to hire them back when they're looking to come back into the workforce, or there's skills that I can help them with while they're out of the workforce? So if anybody has any ideas on that or things that they're doing, I'd love to hear that. We'll go to the next slide. This one's sort of just a fun one, Bethany. You know, one of the things that I'm keeping in my journal is my keep list. And some of them are fun, right? Like, I don't know, raise your hand if you were someone who turned your Christmas lights back on in March because you hadn't taken them down, and we all just felt like we needed some twinkle lights in our life. You know, Frozen 2 came out on Disney early. Hamilton came out. You know, here where I live in Hershey, there are tons of restaurants that are just being creative and putting, you know, outside dining where you can have a drink in Pennsylvania in a parking lot, you know, at a restaurant in November. So the hand sanitizer, this one was just kind of funny. Bethany and I were laughing on this one. Maybe we don't keep this one, but it kind of reminded me of a tequila bottle, and who has hand sanitizer that smells like tequila right now? I do. More of just a funny than a keep. So if you go to the next slide, you know, if you take anything away from this, I would just think about like maybe what are some things that you want to keep. For me, you know, it's some of these things. It's journaling. It's I'll have Bethany share something on this micro love, but then it's connection. I don't know about you, but you know, I reconnected with some high school friends, and we all live in different places of the country. But you know, we maybe talked once or twice a year, and now we probably talk every 4 to 6 weeks on a FaceTime call. And then the last thing I'll share is just name it and reset it. So there's probably 2 or 3 times a week where, you know, I'm trying to remind myself of these things and to stay positive, and to have grace for people. And sometimes you just break down. It happened to me this Wednesday morning, and I had to just remind myself to just name it. Like, what is it that's bothering me right now? Recognize it, and then reset. And so I'll leave you with that. And on the next slide, Bethany, just again, if you want to share, I'd love to celebrate with you. Instead of thinking about what went wrong this year, let's try and think about what went right. So if you have something to share, you can put it in the chat. And I think I'll just wrap it up there, Bethany, unless you have anything else for me.
No, I think that's great. I took a lot of notes, and I'll make sure to compile and some of the sources that you mentioned as well. Do you want to talk about the call to action?
Yes, that was a requirement, sorry. So early in the beginning of the call, when we did our introductions, 2 of the things we talked about were your goal for the end of the decade, and then finish this sentence. And I wish everyone could. And so, you know, as you think about what your lessons learned were for 2020, and you start to look to the next year, but even beyond that, you know, it's fast forward to 2030, I'll have a senior in high school. And what do I want my life to look like? And then finish this sentence, I wish everyone could. And a lot of you shared, could be more kind to each other. I shared, you know, could have more grace for each other. And so I would just ask, you know, try to find a way to put those together. How can you make your wish come true by focusing on a goal that you have for yourself? And then lastly, I'm super excited to hear more from Maeve, who's on the call, and her small business, because we can all find time to support more small businesses.
Julie, that was so great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Awesome. So moving on to our next presentation, which will be from Maeve. Maeve, I'll let you take it away, but really quickly, Maeve has a small business here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So Maeve, do you want to hop on?
Yeah, so you're doing the slides, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, okay. So, hi, my name is Maeve Sattler. I have my small business. It's called Maeve Made. And this first slide is a video that I made as part of it was like a promotion for my maker page for a local event that's called Handmade Arcade, that is usually an in-person event down at the convention center downtown. It draws like 10,000 people in one day of shopping for local makers and artists. And so everything was taken virtually this year online for online shopping. So this was a fun little video I just thought I would start out with, so you can play it. You can go on to the next slide. All right, so my main motivation for making that video was with this transition to just all online shopping, especially with Handmade Arcade not being an in-person event this year. It was really important to me to like kind of show the tactile nature of what I make, which is Polish stars. Star ornaments. I also make tree toppers, wreaths, wall art, garlands, all kinds of like fun little fantastical, whimsical creations. So basically, I started it in 2013. I graduated from the University of Pittsburgh that year with Aubrey, my friend. And we both majored in the same things. I might as well say both of us. We both did architectural studies, minored in historic preservation, and then studio arts. So it was a lot of hands-on coursework, making small, very detail-oriented things. So whenever I started working full-time for an architectural concrete manufacturing company headquartered here in Pittsburgh, I just kind of immediately was hit with this lack of hands-on creative artistic work. And so I decided to kind of dabble in Etsy. I opened up my first Etsy shop in 2013. That's still the platform that I use primarily for my business, but I also started going to local events. I started out, the first one was the Wilkins School Community Center in Regent Square. They had like a little community holiday shop. I started selling there. I branched out to I Made It Market, Handmade Arcade. I did a West Elm pop-up shop locally in Bakery Square one year. So just kind of every year, mostly centered around the holiday season. So anywhere from September to January, I ramp up this business and it sort of takes over my life, and I balance it with my full-time job as well. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit of background. So in terms of what it is that I actually make, a Polish star, it's a century-old traditional Polish folk art ornament that yeah, you can, that's a good slide. So they're also known as porcupine stars, and I received one when I was about 10 years old from my piano teacher. She had traveled to Europe and brought one back to me. I was very artistic as a child, and she thought I would like it. And kind of years later, when I was at Pitt, I was reintroduced to the stars and just started making them. I just enjoy the creativity of, it's a very repetitive process. Julie, I'm thinking about whenever you were mentioning your knitting. For me, it's a very similar kind of very detail-oriented, repetitive process. You can think a lot while doing it. You can listen to audiobooks, podcasts. Like for me, it's very calming, but also opens up to a lot of creative expression through color, pattern, different materials, different types of paper. I use a lot of recycled materials, hand-dyed ribbons. So it's kind of like endlessly customizable. So I also have a very specific process for making my stars that sort of differs from the, if you were to type in, you know, into Google, like Polish star ornament tutorial. I just kind of, through a lot of trial and error, really had to perfect my technique and work really hard to kind of create like a consistent product and become reliable locally and I guess nationally as well through Etsy for creating, you know, something that looks great all year round, and is really just about celebrating and just having something small and unique that makes you happy when you look at it. So let's see. If you want to go to the next slide. So I mentioned earlier when I was talking about the video, Handmade Arcade, this is a photo of my booth from last year, 2019. And so, as I mentioned, this entire event has gone onto a virtual platform. If you go to handmadearcade.org, you can search for, it's not just Pittsburgh local makers, although it's predominantly Pittsburgh. There are some makers from Philadelphia, Seattle, just kind of all over the country, in a wide variety of different mediums, a lot of great giftable items, a lot of great, really useful items, especially, you know, a lot of makers have been very they've reacted and sort of been flexible in terms of like making things that are sort of creative solutions to like quarantine activities for kids and just like hobby-based things that people might have gotten more into as the quarantine time has, you know, gone across our entire year. So I would encourage you to check that out. It goes, as the slide shows, till December 6th. So this is tomorrow and Sunday are the last 2 days of the virtual marketplace. Although I think most of the artists, if you wanted to bookmark them and come back to them later, you know, their shoppable, you know, they all have online shops for all year round. So I would definitely encourage you to check that out. And just kind of like a note about just supporting small businesses. I thought this was interesting, so I'm just going to read my actual note that I made about it. Was there was a Minneapolis-based small business advocacy organization that said for every $100 spent at a local independent store, about $68 returns to the community. So I thought that was very interesting because it's like an actual statistic to back the idea that, you know, whenever you shop from a small business, a local business, that money stays in your community and benefits your community. So I'm sure that, you know, that varies obviously across industries, especially. But also another thing to note is that local businesses also use the goods and services of other local businesses. So it really is like a circular effect in creating just like you know, lots of different smaller businesses that are dependent on each other for a local economy. So that's very important. And then also just like community identity. Whenever you walk into a chain store, you know, you could be anywhere in the world if you weren't sure it was outside of the doors. Whereas whenever you walk into a small business, and for myself, I don't have a storefront, but you know, if I'm at a Handmade Arcade or any other kind of local event, it really creates a sense of place. So that's very important to preserve. I know you've all probably heard, you know, the message about supporting small businesses, especially during the pandemic, to make sure that they don't close. I mean, it would be so heartbreaking if you think of some of your favorite main streets and places where you go to shop that aren't necessarily the mall, although there are a lot of small businesses in malls as well. But you know, just places where you're typically not just seeing a bunch of chain stores. If those places, those restaurants, those little boutiques, if they close down, there's really not anything that ensures that they could ever return. So yeah, I think that is, oh, and then also I just wanted to note, supporting small businesses does not always mean spending your money. If you don't have a lot of money, if you have lost an income stream through the pandemic, there are a lot of ways that you can support local businesses. In other ways, you can leave reviews for products and services that you possibly, you know, have used in the past years. You can share on social media, commenting, liking things, resharing things. All of that goes a long way. All of the magical algorithms that go behind all of the online shopping platforms. I don't know how any of it works, but apparently it helps. So yeah, and then I guess to go to the next slide and finish up. Yay, we're gonna end with a small business giveaway. So the question, and whoever answers it first gets to pick from any of the photos on this slide it's a star ornament that's about 4.5 inches big, if you just kind of want to get a sense of scale. But the question is, what is my favorite place in the world from earlier? So whoever answers first.
You can look back in the chat and cheat if you want.
Yay, I think, was it Leslie who got it?
Yep. Awesome. So Leslie, I can follow up with you after today's call and see which one of these ornaments that you would like to choose from. And then you can expect that in the mail.
Fantastic. They're beautiful.
Thank you.
Maeve, is there anything else you wanted to share?
No, I mean, that's probably it.
Great. I mean, yeah, I love the products that you create. So I was so excited that you were available to come and present to us today, just because I thought they're ornaments, they're, you know, part of the season that we're currently in. So thank you so much for coming and sharing a little bit more about your small business and also sharing those interesting facts for us too. So thank you.
Oh yeah, thanks Bethany. And also thanks Julie for your whole presentation beforehand. I also thought of something else that's not related to my business at all, but I second every recommendation for anything that Brene Brown has ever made, or podcasts or books, and her book Dare to Lead is amazing. I have it in both the print version and the audiobook version, and I highly recommend it as a gift for the holidays if you know anyone who would benefit from it. It's fantastic.
Awesome, thank you. So we have about a minute left. So I just wanted to quickly wrap up and just thank you all for being here. My goal was to have more people show up this month than last month, and we did beat the goal by like 2 people. So thank you for taking time out of your day to come here. Save your calendar, mark your calendars for January 8th, which will be our next Lunch and Learn. The main presentation will be by Sarah Jave Poetry. If you have Instagram, check out her work on Instagram. She's going to be launching her own poetry book, I believe next year in 2021. So she's going to come and share more about her work. And our small business spotlight is going to be Cousins Books, which is a pop-up bookstore in Newcastle. So we're going to be having the 2 founders of that small business come and share more about what they're doing to promote small businesses and local bookstores in the country. One of the other things I remind people to do at the end of these presentations is, if you had a great time today and if you learned something new and if you enjoyed it, to tell 3 friends. So my 3 friends that I'm going to be reaching out to about next month's Lunch and Learn are Mandy, Christine, and Jeremy. And lastly, I will be forwarding you all the information, following up with all the information that was shared during the main presentation and sharing more information about Maeve's small business to you via email. But I'd also love to hear from you. So if you have any recommendations for future Lunch and Learns, if you have a topic that you'd like to present on, if you have a small business that you'd like to highlight, feel free to email me. And also check out my website, which is kind of where I'm just hosting all of the information for the Lunch and Learns moving forward. So it is 12:00, it's 1:01, so I will let you all go. But thank you again for coming, and I hope it was a good way to spend an hour on your Friday afternoon. So thank you.